"1976 was the year of sensations, of Aussie gold and relentless Swedish domination. Every hit seemed number one bound, and disco was the latest hot sound. There were radios playing the hits right across the nation." Newsflash people, it is February 1976 and the charts stocked with amazing hit tunes. Check them out, it costs nothing to try. Let's get down to it. Commencing this week with a segment that is very disappointed by David Crisafulli. Hello and goodbye! Farewelling the charts this week are two good uns. A song that I think will prove to be one of the very biggest hits we've had that never made number one. Stalled at 2 for 3 weeks behind ABBA, Sailing by Rod Stewart, dropping out after 10 weeks in the top 10. With it was Australia's top band, Sherbet. Hot call from me there. They were involved in an epic war with Skyhooks for that title, with kids divided into almost armed camps between the two, and I was in Team Sherbet. With Matter of Time, a glammy, rocky stomper that did 2 months in the top 10 for a top of 5. Off their excellent Life is for Living album, this one was a bit of an outlier as keyboardist Garth Porter handles the vocals, and he's no slouch. B-side Only One You is a stonker too, half teeny bop love song but with just enough of Sherbet's former proggy pedigree to make it sound a bit majestic, down from 7 to 15. Coming in are another Aussie classic, AC/DC, with It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll, for a single week at 10. Is this the greatest Australian record ever made? Accompanying it is the Captain and Tennille with The Way That I Want to Touch You, up from 12 for the first of its 2 weeks at number 9, one of 7 top 10s for the toothsome duo between 1975 and 1980. Biggest hit leaving was Neil Sedaka's Bad Blood, which prominently featured Elton John, which got to a tantalising number 11. Biggest hit debuting this week is Love Hurts by Jim Capaldi, which was to get eventually to number 6. This went neck and neck up the charts with Nazareth's hard-rocking version, eventually both making the top 10. Even though Capaldi peaked higher, it debuted lower than Nazareth. And the next number one hit will be Barack's Stride by Shotgun Trout. That's a bit of a tricky one because I literally couldn't get a single anagram out of the title. So I sort of described it. So you have to unpick the description and then work out which song it applies to, which you'll never do because it's at number 52 this week. Good luck. Number 10 this week are indeed the Akadaculous ones with It's a Long Way to the Top, a titanically great record with 2 remarkable stories behind it, being how it was made from an epic jam session which was edited down by George Young. Young mused that a bagpipe would sound good on the song, and Bon Scott volunteered that he'd indeed played in a pipe band, with which he absented himself and returned some hours later with a set of bagpipes, which then cost the unearthly price of $479. That's about $4,200 today, and it was almost immediately apparent that Scott had no idea how to assemble, let alone play the bagpipes. He had, it turns out, been a drummer in the pipe band. Nonetheless, he applied himself to the task and did indeed play on the record. The song was played only a handful of times, usually with the tape supplying Scott's pipe part, before the valuable bagpipes were torn apart by fans. Some accounts say it was in Launceston, Tasmania, and others suggest St Albans, Victoria. The other is the promotional film made for it by Countdown, the Sunday night pop music program, filmed on the back of a flatbed truck in Melbourne's Swanston Street with the Rats of Tobruk Pipe Band, which stands as one of the most iconic documents in Australian music history. While it was great for Countdown, it didn't do much for the band, boosting the song for a single week at number 10 and a mediocre 15-week all up. But Ted Albert's faith in the band was, for the time being, infinite. Number 9 is the Captain and Tennille with their follow-up to their super smash Love Will Keep Us Together, The Way That I Want to Touch You. 2 weeks in at number 9, this one got me to thinking. In 1975, A&M Records must have been a bit worried because their biggest act, Carpenters, were looking a bit shop-worn, especially as the grueling 1975 World Tour ground on with both Richard and Karen succumbing to their various demons. And then these two walked through the door. Sensing a like-for-like replacement, they were snaffled up, given the irresistible Sedaka Howie Greenfield song Love Will Keep Us Together, and they had a 4-week number 1 hit straight up. So I got to thinking, which band actually had the bigger hit for A&M? Thus a new feature was born, Single Shootout, where we put big hits head-to-head to determine the champ. Carpenter's biggest hit was 1970's Close to You. Putting it head-to-head with LWKUT, we see they both peaked with 4 consecutive weeks at number 1, and they were both certified gold records. The Captain and Tennille's record had a longer chart run, 24 weeks over 17. But since then, Close to You has developed a huge advantage in terms of the total number of streams. They both won at the respective year's Grammy, but Love Will Keep Us Together won the biggest prize, Record of the Year, Close to You losing out to Bridge Over Troubled Water. And they both made number one in 2 other major world markets. For our first ever hit single Shootout, I have to give it to Love Will Keep Us Together very narrowly, even though Close to You seems to have had the longer lasting impact with its huge streams following, 6 months on the chart and the Record of the Year just aces Richard and Karen. What do you think? Do tell me in the comments. Back to the charts, and at number 8 it's old Bobo, Bob Dylan, with his surprise hit Hurricane, an epic story aimed at getting some bloke called Reuben Carter out of jail. Well, he was hocked up on what looked like, to all intents and purposes, some decidedly iffy evidence. The first thing Carter did when he got out of jail in March 1976, of course, was to beat the living daylights out of the woman who raised the money to get him out. Hurricane was an 8-minute plus song split into 2 sides, but late night DJs would often play the whole track when they wanted to have a smoke break or use the gents. And it was during one such play, as I lay in bed with my little blue tranny tucked under my pillow, that I heard the word shit for the first time ever in a song. Spokesperson for a generation, but the first time he reaches out to me is to show me the word shit. 6 weeks in the 10 for Bob here, 15 weeks all up, and a top of number 7. 7 is one of disco's first big shots across the bow of the good ship Western culture. That's the Way I Like It by KC and the Sunshine Band, and we certainly did like it. I did. I bought all their singles. This one, Shake, 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 Get Down Tonight, Boogie Shoes, all of them. Good as it was, a couple of weeks at 5 was all it could aspire to. It was very heavy traffic at the top of the charts in late 75, early 76, and even good ones like this would get stuck behind it. I'm claiming number 6 as an Aussie hit because it's just part of the cultural landscape here, even if the artist is a very proud New Zealander in Max Merritt. Max had been in the business 20 years at this point, a teenage rocker who put a band together back in New Zealand to entertain American troops stationed there, and who'd been based in Australia since 1964, popping off hits pretty consistently for the first 5 years or so, but Slippin' Away was his first in a while. And it was a monster. It would peak for 2 weeks at number 2 and spend a whopping 25 weeks on the charts. It's just one of those songs that was just so over the radio, anyone in my age here in Australia would seem unable to forget it. Merritt was a much beloved figure on the pub and club scene, and his death a few years ago saw genuine expressions of grief and loss. Good bloke. At 5, it is one of the most dominant hits here ever in the history of our chart, a former 10-week number 1, Mamma Mia by ABBA. Second to biggest hit amongst the 35 top 40s, 16 top 10 and 6 number 1s that ABBA enjoyed across 8 years from 1974 to 1983. By the time this fell off the charts at the beginning of May, its successor, the far inferior Fernando, had been ensconced at number 1 for 5 weeks. There'll always be people who sniff at ABBA a little, accusing them of being all device and artifice or just the band with 2 hot chicks, and it's as if there was some higher aspiration that they and all other just pop groups should have held. This disregards the notion that mass popular music, which has been the dominant medium by which Western music has been communicated for over 100 years now, is all device and artifice. Any music really is device and artifice, and that by any objective standard, ABBA were very, very, very good at it. In my personal experience of music, ABBA have been one of the central joys and consistent delights and surprises at its core. By the way of trivia, although it spent 10 weeks on top here, in Sweden, the land of its birth, it peaked at number 64. Now it's time for the segment which makes you think our folks should get their heads read. And there are a plethora of good records this week that failed to hit the top 10. One of them, It's Almost Summer by, in my opinion, the greatest Australian rocker of all time, Brisbane boy Billy Thorpe, didn't even make the top 40, tanking at 44 despite abundant radio play. Ian Hunter's Rocking Once Bitten Twice Shy had a couple of goes at the top 40, lasting 6 weeks all up and venturing no higher than 29. The debut single for the Little River Band, Curiosity Killed the Cat, possibly a little too exotic for the marketplace, wobbled its tuneful wares up no better than 15. LRB, before they went to America and became all yacht rocky, had a run of great singles from late 1975 to early 1978, only one of which, Help Is On Its Way, made the national top 10. And Elton John with Island Girl, who only got to number 12. One of my great impediments when it comes to music is that because I don't pay attention to lyrics, I mishear them all the time. And if I mishear a lyric, it tends to stay with me as the lyric. Like I'll always sing I Fell Into Your Broken Arms, I Didn't Stand a Chance, when Dusty comes on with I Only Want to Be With You. I get this from my mother, I think, who misheard the lyrics to Island Girls as I Like Girls and promptly declared, I like girls? Who's he trying to fool? David Essex with his poppy and boppy Hold Me Close, steady this week at 4. In fact, the entire top 5 is unchanged this week. HMC would eventually reach number 2 in a fortnight, but after that it would very quickly tumble off the charts. It did much better here than in the rest of the country, making only number 7 nationally. Essex is still a popular figure in the UK today, largely due to his Cliff Richard-like ability to resist ageing. 3 are the Bay City Rollers with Money Honey. Much derided at the time, history looks back more kindly, I think, on the Rollers, who were at their best a pretty good power pop group, and Money Honey is them at their best. It's certainly the hardest, glammiest of all their hits. Third of the 10 top 40 hits, this one is spending the last of its 3 weeks at number 3 before slipping off the charts after 16 weeks. The album this comes from, Dedication, contains a pretty fair version of Vanda and Young's Yesterday's Hero, a huge hit near locally for John Paul Young. Number 2 this week, as it has been for 7 of the last 8, is the glorious SOS by ABBA, the only song that's ever made number 1, which, if you spell it out, still makes sense if you write it backwards. I, myself, think this song is better than Mamma Mia. I think it's a superior song, and as a song I can't imagine anyone but ABBA doing Mamma Mia. But SOS seems to be a song that anyone can do, which to me is a hallmark of a great pop song. This one spent 3 weeks at number 2 behind Mamma Mia, then hit the top for a lonesome week, and then 4 weeks at number 2 behind the current number 1. All up it spent 12 weeks in the top 10 and 6 months on the chart. The fact of the matter is that it's time for facts. There is a basketball court on top of the US Supreme Court building. Lady Gaga, whoever she is one of very few artists ever to refuse Weird Al Yankovic permission to release a parody song. But because she was such a bitch about it, Yankovic did it anyway. Berlin boasts more museums than it does rainy days on average in a year. Now that your mind is well and truly boggled, it's Val's Fantastic World of Fact. Biggest mover this week is I Write the Songs by Barry Manilow, up from 37 to 25. Ironically, Manilow didn't write the song in question. Bruce Johnson of the Beach Boys actually penned it. And the biggest faller this week is the sadly misunderstood Island Girl by Elton John, down from 25 to 36. If you really listen to the lyrics, it's quite a sad and dark song at heart. Highest debutante is the latest hit from RAK Records, that great glam power pop factory, Julianne by Kenny, which came in at number 32. This was a slice of Beach Boyish power pop, but the real story here is how producer Svengali Mickey Most, who had 2 hits with Tony Kenny, billed as Kenny, the previous year, and who had left RAK Record, changed this band's name from Chuff to Kenny to try and cash in. Julianne made number 7 in the long run. And the longest runner on the charts this week was Mamma Mia, which had been around for 20 weeks at this point. In the USA, it was Love Roller Coaster by the Ohio Players on top, and in the UK, Mamma Mia was in its last week adorning the pinnacle. Last year, the number 1 was an Aussie hit, My Little Angel by William Shakespeare on the Albert label. William Shakespeare had 2 big hits in 1974, this one and Can't Stop Myself From Loving You, which made number 2. Of them, this is very much the weaker, definitely being one of the songs Harry Vanda and George Young would not want to have been reminded of. Can't Stop Myself was, however, one of their very, very best. And the next year it will be a bit of a surprise with The Way That You Do It by Pussycat standing supreme, one of our less memorable chart toppers. Number 1 album in the town this week with the songs that are currently at 2 and 5, so it is no surprise it is ABBA's self-titled album, but it's soon to be deposed, however, by Bob Dylan's Desire. 1976 wasn't what you'd call a first-rank year for albums. Plenty of classics, but it was no 1971. But there were some pretty good ones nonetheless. Here's a sampling of 12 of the best closing tracks from 1976 albums.
Wild as the wind. I'm gonna try and do my best to be good to this woman. You better. Because I needs me a woman, see. I'm tired of this horse. I think that you're the wickedest woman that I ever had. Hey Lord, don't
Then he lost the thread and his mind got cluttered, and the words just rolled off down the gutter.
And if California slides into the ocean, like the mystics and statistics say it will, and they wandered in from the city of St. John without any time.
That was enlightening. Now for the Coupé de Grace, the number one hit. It's the mighty monk with the funk in his badunkadunk, Monty the Safety Monkey. Go! Number one this week in its third week on top is Aussie Gold. Jump in My Car by the Ted Mulry Gang, produced by Ted Albert himself on the Albert's record label. The last of 8 number one hits for the label, or its predecessor Albert Productions, were to enjoy in a long and illustrious career. Spending a towering 6 weeks on top, this ABBA buster is another ubiquitous cultural artifact from the time. The two Teds, Mulry and Albert, polar opposites in every way, were thick as thieves, and the stories of their mischief and pranking one another are legions. One can only imagine the Strictly Business FIFA Riccobono pushing them out of the Albert's office after some shenanigans with, "Oh, you boys, come on, we're trying to work here." This one hung on for another 3 weeks before C.W. McCall hit number one with Convoy, which set the stage for the great Fernando Bohemian Rhapsody showdown. But that's another story. Well, folks, that's how the cow ate the cabbage this week in February 1976. What a week. What a time to be listening to the radio. Where were you in 1976? Who were you in 1976? Were you even in 1976? Do tell down below in the comments, and rest assured, should the good Lord be a-willin' and the creeks don't rise, we'll be back with another instalment next week. Ish.